Hello everybody and welcome to this latest webinar here, one of our positive economics webinars. My name is Susan. Delighted to see that you're all giving up part of your Monday evening here to spend with me, so I appreciate that a lot and thank you. A lot has changed of course as well since we spoke last time. Various different things to do with the economy of course, but also to do with the Leaving Cert, as well as of course the other development that's happened at Edco that I will talk about in a moment. But first of all, will you just let me know that you can hear me okay? So you might just chat in there into the questions and answers. You might just chat in there and just tell me if you can hear me okay, and just tell me what part of the world that you're tuning in from this evening. So I'm just going to, okay, Alicia says all good, great stuff. Sounds like the sound so is good to go. Very good, perfect. So Dermot is tuning in today from Ashford Wicklow. I recognise you from Twitter, Dermot. Hello Anna, great stuff, all good. Ross says Carnew, shout out to Dougie. Okay, Ross, Carnew as well. Okay, so I see that there's a number of you there tuning. Oh, Headford and Galway, great, all good and in Sean, lovely. Hello Jamie in Kinsale, great to see that that all is well there too. Very good. Okay, that was the first thing that I wanted to check in with you. Now, the last time that I was here with you, we had some new developments, and that was that we had the digital completion booklet. And the time before that, we had some new developments, which was that we actually had the brief itself. Whereas this time round, what we have is the fact that, as I told you, the last time I was talking to you, literally, the last time that I was talking to you, I was telling you that I had to go away and I had to work on the digital completion booklet, particularly in line with the 2 case studies that we wrote. And they are now available, and lots of you sent me messages through Instagram, you sent me messages through Facebook, you sent me messages through Twitter DMs, you sent me emails, you sent me all sorts asking when were these going to be available. So I'm delighted to tell you that they are available now. Okay, so just in case anybody doesn't know, here's where you can find them. So you go into your Edco Learning. A couple of you asked me to send you on the link. The thing is that you have to go in here through Edco Learning. So even if I did send you on the link, I'd simply be sending you here. So just to let you know, that's the answer to that. So if you go in here into your Edco Learning, and then if you go over here to the Positive Economics Research Study Booklet, my second screen is over here. That's why I am. That's why I'm looking that way. And then in here, if we go to the case studies 3.3, and then as you can see there, they will appear. Now it goes on. There is the example of for example, the introduction, sorry, and the research process. So that was where the first one I focused on was on entrepreneurship. Remember what I told you the last time is that I simply picked the areas that I was most interested in. Simply put, that's exactly what I did. So I started off, I personally, as an exporter, somebody that's involved in a lot of international business, exports for me are really interesting. Always interested in how businesses are developing, who they're doing business with, and so on. So my brief, of course, back when I was writing these quite some time ago, was that we didn't have a brief. So I wanted to come up with something that was structured. And then when we actually saw what the brief was later on, like we were wondering, Brian and Trudy and myself were wondering, will this be general? Will it not? You know, will it be very specific? Will it not? And of course, it was really interesting then to see how the angle on sustainability was the key thing that was brought into the final brief itself. So as you can see, that they're all in there. The second one is entrepreneurship, and in particular, what our editor really wanted us to do is she wanted to make sure that we had different styles as well. So there, for example, in the exports one's quite bullet focused, whereas if I go on there now, it'll appear there now in a little while. Yep, there you go. On the other hand, when we look at the entrepreneurship one, then it's a lot more picture focused, and also it's more prose, as in written in sentences. So she particularly wanted us to do that to make sure that we were giving an example of how different things could be done. Just like I said to you as well the last time, whenever you're putting your data together, it can be a very good idea to shape it using different tables and graphs and images and so on, particularly if you're finding the word count difficult. So, well, of course, I am referring to the project. I forgot. I didn't realize I told you I'm referring to the project. But that they are all of the key things that we particularly wanted to show exactly how it was done. Another thing I was telling you about last time round is the word count. A lot of you have also been reaching out to me about that, and I was telling you that You know, when I wrote this originally, the reflection was about 4 times longer than it needed to be. So the number of words in the final reflection was, well, that one now was tight, was tight at the upper end. That one was 147 words. It's in between 125 and 150. Personally, I think it's a good thing that they have given you as much direction as they have done when it comes to number of words per section. I think that that's certainly been something that's been a helpful development, because then you can really gauge it, and of course then when it's related to the marks as well. But how I brought it down, because I did tell you that I'd tell you about this time, right? And you know, and every other webinar that you're with me for the next year, we have our date for our next one. I'll give you the link to that before the end. But all the time, what I think is important is that these conversations that you and I have are a continuation. So I know sometimes I say things about the last webinar and you mightn't have been there, but that's just to let you know is that this series is open to you all to join right throughout. So sometimes I'll refer to things, but you can always look back in the previous session or on the summary links as well to see, you know, the areas about what I'm talking about. But I did tell you the last time, I said to you that there were certain areas where I had written too much, and how did I bring it down? So here's how I did. Number one was I was ruthless, R-U-T-H-L-E-S-S, ruthless in terms of determining what was really important, what really needed to stay. The second thing is that if I needed to be economical with the word count, then I might have put an image together. PowerPoint is brilliant for giving you design ideas for coming up with images. And one of the images that's in the case studies, I simply put the words into PowerPoint, and then I clicked design ideas, and then I got an image. And now you can't do that with much text, of course, but just when it comes down to it. But there is also one thing that I encourage you not to do, and that is to try to copy a part from some area where you've too much and drop it into the other. So, because I could have done that. I could have done that with my reflection. Like, my conclusion was pretty spot on in terms of number of words. My introduction was too short, because, and here's why, is because when I actually put in the sources, you know, where I got the primary and secondary sources, and I put them into the introduction, which is where they belong, then I realized, actually, sorry, not my introduction was too short, that wasn't too short, and my research process then was too short. And of course, you think, well, if the words written in reflection, well, I just move them across. Don't fall into that trap. Don't fall into that trap. The whole idea of this research study is that you take the individual areas that they've given you with the words counts that they've given you and take that approach to it. So 3 things I would say. Number 1, be ruthless. And when I say be ruthless, look only at the brief again and again and again and again. Am I answering what the brief wants, as opposed to what I feel comfortable in or what I put a lot of work into? Second thing is, if you need to be economical, maybe try to put some words into a picture. Suggestion that I have personally is put them onto PowerPoint and click the design ideas, and then it can be a great way to come up with graphics that look very well and that have text in them. And number 3, do not copy from one area and drop it into another. It just doesn't work. I looked at it and I tried, and I said, I wonder, was there something in my reflection that I could move into the research process? And the answer was no. So what we did was 3 of us sat down digitally, of course. Brian and Trudy and I went back through and we looked at the research process that we had. It's all there, like it's all there in the, you can see it now, like it's all in the booklet. But maybe if you're looking, of course, at, maybe my face is at the top of the screen, I should be pointing downwards, but anyway, the screen is over there. And that was what we did, was that we said, right, how do we find a way to expand the research process? And we basically had to add things directly from there rather than working the other way around. Some of you, of course, want to have that challenge because you hadn't written something before you got the digital completion booklet. So therefore you may not be trying to, you know, squeeze anything in, but for any of you that are, certainly something that I would say is very, very important. Now, I'm going to just take a little bit of time on elasticity tonight, but before I do, I'm just going to have a quick look here at the questions. Right, so one of you said, do you need to link a sustainable development goal to either research topic, or is it optional? Now, hi Adam, first of all, great to have you here. So what I'm going to say there is, let me go back to the brief, okay? And let's just, because I'm going to take the individual angle tonight, right? So that's particularly where I'm going to focus. I've taken on the government angle in understanding fiscal policy, and also I took on the business angle when I did business and sustainability. So tonight I'm totally focused on the individual. So Adam, let's take a look at your point there, which is, let's just say I'm looking at to pursue an individual line of inquiry on the potential implications of the COVID-19 crisis on sustainable development for individual behaviour. Now, that doesn't necessarily specify a sustainable development goal. So I wouldn't be necessarily trying to include that in, but the sustainable development goals gives a really nice framework, because of course there's one of 17. And the other thing, of course, is that you have got some great references there. And by using a sustainable development goal, you definitely clearly point out how you're linking it to sustainable development for individual behaviour. So there's positives and negatives, right? So the positives are those three. They're a very great framework, got some plenty of data, loads of data. And the third thing is that you're really highlighting the linkage with sustainable development and individual behaviour. On the other hand, the negative is that you may feel that that you have to find a way to link it in, or that you feel hemmed in by that. So from that point of view, I would say make your decision according to that, right? I'm not going to tell you one way or the other, because the brief doesn't say you have to. So I'm just giving you the positives or the negatives of doing it, and then you decide, is it something that naturally fits in to the study? That's the way in which I would answer that. Okay, so let me see now. Let me see. Let me just go back. Right, Hannah says, hi Hannah. Again, another one from social media I recognize. Hannah says, when will this webinar be available to watch? Would love to show it in the morning in the class at 9 AM. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be ready. It'll be ready then for sure. I do my research, or I do my summary article afterwards. Hannah, I won't be leaving the office until then. So yeah, I'll make sure that you have it. What I will say is that it won't be available on Positive Economics in the morning, because the team at Edco have to come in. So just so that you know, Hannah, if you go to thepositiveeconomist.com, so right now we have this article here is the headline one. It will be replaced. So, but it will be there. Yep, it will indeed. It'll be there, all right. No problem at all. And good morning to all of your students, if it's who's watching this Tuesday morning at 9 AM in the lead up to that. Now I want to actually keep a link open here, because I wanted to share that with you as well. But let me go back in the meantime, back to the brief. Jamie says, in terms of your sample research, would there be close to getting the full 20%? Thank you. Jamie, I can't answer that for you, because I am not the person who would be in a position to mark them. Sorry, I'm just trying to open the brief back up here. Yeah, I'm not in the position of where I would be marking the result myself, so I'm not in a position to answer that. When I say not in a position, is that I don't know, but I mean, as a practicing economist, the role that I had there was to make sure that we did something where it met. I'm just going to close my email there now down, because it keeps dinging. It met the requirements of the brief. That was the whole point. It met the word count of the brief, and it also linked in the various different economic concepts and so on like that. So that was why we just had to make sure that we did exactly what was required. Would it get the full 20%? I don't know exactly what the markers are going to look for, but of course that is the whole task of the economic study itself. Okay, so sorry. Then on top of that, I'm just going to go down there. Then somebody else then asks a question. Sorry, just trying to have a look there on my screen to see what the full question is. And of course, as I always do, I'll try to put get as many questions in here as possible. Okay, so this one comes from Fabian. Hannah says, thanks, you're very welcome. Fabian says, should the economic theory that the study bases their approach on be from the specification? Or, for example, is the theory that recessions impact low-income households more than high-income households an appropriate theory? Does it have to be from the specification? Let's go back and see what specifically is being looked for. when we get here. So it says outline the aims of this line of inquiry in the context of the learning outcomes in the specification. So that now, so that's the answer to that first question. But when you say, for example, the theory that recessions impact low household incomes more than high income households is an appropriate theory, you see what you're talking about there is actually income elasticity, which is part of the learning specification anyway. So what I would say is take your theory and link it like strongly, because that's an easy one now, Fabian, to be able to connect that back into something that is there. So just take what you want to do and connect it back to what it says here, the context of the learning outcomes in the specification. Anna said, there isn't too much information on how COVID impacted the tourism industry in Ireland. Would it be too late to switch topic now? That's completely up to you, Anna, as regards how long it takes you to put the project together. But what I will say is there's probably, I mean, I'm sure you've looked at Tourism Ireland, I'm sure you've looked at Fall to Ireland. But there certainly would be a lot of information out there on topics like that. Sorry, I don't know how much there is, but there certainly would be information about that in those particular sources. So, you know, I would check that out. But when you say is it too late, that's entirely up to you as regards how long it would take you to put this together. What I will say is that if any of you do decide to switch topic at this stage, for sure, there is one thing, and that is for sure, is that it won't take you as long to do it again, because a lot of what you needed to do in order to get ready for this and to learn in the process, and you know, the differences between secondary and primary and referencing, you'll have all of that, those practices ready. So it won't take you as long. If you do switch, it won't take you as long. You actually learned a lot the first time around. Anyway, okay, so I think I've answered most questions there for the moment. So I'm just going to move into, I'm going to ask you a different question right now. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to ask you I'm going to share a link with you, and what I'd love for you to do, what I would love to do is, as we talk about elasticity, just click on that link there in the chat there, please. Or alternatively, you can just look at the screen and you should see menti.com, and the code up at the top, you can just type in the code as well, right? So as soon as you get in there, just press the heart button. And I can see a number of you there now have done that already. So just click the heart button. So what I want to do here is I am trying to show you exactly how elasticity actually works, right? But I want you to help me. Because what I want to be able to do with you is I want to give you examples of the way in which elasticity works. But let's do so through the impact of COVID and learn about sustainability at the same time. All right. So at the moment there, I see that there's 20 hearts. So we have lots more than that here on the webinar tonight. So I'm just going to give you another 10 seconds. So you can either click on the link that I put into the chat, or alternatively, what you can do is that go on to menti.com and put in the code 3225704. Okay. And okay, well, we're almost at 30 people there now, and as I say, there's a lot more than that on there, so you can join. So first question I'm going to ask you is this, right? So it's 3 questions, and as I say, I'm going to share the results on Instagram later, right? So just to give you an idea of what you're all telling me. All right, we've gotten well over 30 now, which is great. So on Susan, the Positive Economist, later, I'll share the results of these, but you'll be able to see them now live, right? So first question is this. So you can only choose one for the next month, just one. So that is, you can only choose Instagram and not the other 4. You can only choose Netflix, but not the other 4. You can only choose your favorite type of food. My favorite type of food is Indian. I love naan bread. I love cooking my own. You can only choose text and messages, which means if you don't choose this one, no Messenger, no Snapchat, no WhatsApp, no Instagram Messenger. Or you can only choose your earphones, which means if you don't choose this one, anything you listen to has to be out loud. So no earphones when you're listening to music. If you're listening to a webinar like this and you have your earphones in, well, then you have to take them out and just listen in the noise of your household. Okay. So far, I find this intriguing, right? So let's just see here now what you're coming up with. At this stage, you should, if you look back on the screen where I am, you'll see what answers people have picked. Wow. Well, geez, we've had a big change there. Loads of you, loads and loads. So 21 of you have said that if you could only choose one thing for the next month to the exclusion of the other four, you would pick texts and messages. So you would prefer you would prefer to communicate with other people rather than have, let's say, your favorite type of food, rather than Netflix, rather than Instagram, and rather than your earphones. So that's the first. So right, so what that's telling me is that the thing that's most important to you as a group, of the 48 people anyway here so far that have voted, anybody else can, by the way, you can click on the link that's in the chat, or alternatively go on to menti.com and put in the code that's up there on the top of the screen. So that's the first thing that I can see here, right? The second thing I can see is that from your favorite type of food, that's the next one, is your favorite type of food, right? That's interesting. So what you're telling me there is that you are the food you would much prefer to have your favorite type of food rather than of Netflix, rather than of Instagram, rather than of earphones. Earphones is next, Netflix is next, Instagram is next. Okay, let's see how we can, I'll leave this back to elasticity now in a while, don't worry. Next question I want to ask you. So what became more important to you during lockdown? I'll answer all these questions at the end for me as well, by the way, right? What became more important to you during lockdown? So for me, just to give you an example, having Zoom, because I couldn't physically get out to speak at conferences, or I couldn't get out to run our transition year work experience programs in person. So what became more and more important to me, let's say, was having online technologies. I have a microphone, I have a webcam, I have 3 screens, I have a ring light, like my technology. That became more important to me as we went through lockdown. So what you're saying, again, if you look at my screen, as soon as you've put it, wow, guys, there's the bigger one word comes, that means the more and more people are referring to it, right? So just interesting here, loads and loads of you are, because as it keeps coming in, it keeps changing here, okay? So family, good Wi-Fi, exercise, technology, family time, going for a walk, being outdoors, girlfriend, myself, my iPad streaming services, being home gym, Google Meet, internet, faster broadband, family meals, communication, normal school, Zoom, sport. But just look here at the big ones that's coming out, the really, really big ones, is family, technology, exercise, friends, health, Wi-Fi. And it's so interestingly, all of these things became more important to you, right? So you probably get where I'm going with this now shortly, but as they became more and more important to you, that sounds to me like you would have paid more and more to have access to them. Would you have paid more to upgrade your Wi-Fi? Would you, or on the other hand, would you have, if the Wi-Fi cost more to keep the same level, would you have paid more for it? Well, again, you'll see where I'm going with this. When it came to exercise or to gyms, okay, well, obviously some exercise doesn't cost anything. I completely get that. But on the other hand, when it comes to, let's say, going to the gym, or maybe it's the membership to the local swimming club, I swim when I can. As some of you, I told in previous webinars, I broke my foot in 2018, so I'm physically not able to run for a very long time, or much at all really. So therefore I need something else, and obviously swimming is where you can be entirely weightless. So there's a range of things in here. There's a range of things in here that I would imagine that if I asked you to pay more for them, not I, but the gym itself or whatever, you may have. And again, you'll see how I'm linking this into elasticity. Okay, one last question. What became less important during lockdown, right? So I'm going to give you a very simple example here. Super simple example. The price of flights. I was somebody that traveled twice a month, right? At least I would have been on a plane every 2 weeks, at least, often more. And during lockdown, I couldn't go, couldn't fly. So I wasn't looking at my Skyscanner apps. I wasn't looking at anything like that. So let's just see now. What became less important? School. What became less important? Travel, money, parties, holidays. Okay, money, new clothes. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. Again, as they're coming in there, 21 answers. As they're coming in, a lot of people say that, is they say, well, you know what, I actually don't, like, I'm not going out. I'm not going out for dinner. I'm not going out for certain things. So therefore, if I'm not going out, why am I buying clothes to dress up? Now, me, I come into the office every day. So so when I say I come into the office, so my office, there's only me in it. So there's actually nobody, like if I showed you the 4 walls, there's nobody here. So this is what I do is I come in here every day and I'm on camera most of the time. I'm on calls, I'm on webinars, I'm doing various different things. So therefore for me, I still have a reason to dress up and put on makeup and all that kind of thing. So what have you said? You said going out, you said drinking, okay. You said education, you said pubs, that's good. Price of pints, yeah. Parties, nights out, petrol, yeah. Makeup, self-image, social media, interesting, clothing, education, cinema, hygiene, okay. Transport, flying, and so on like that. Okay, so all of these things became less important. Well, if they became less important, well then what does that tell me? So me in the case of flights, right, and you in the case of holidays, you in the price of clothes, you and whatever, is that if the price of flights went up more, I wasn't doing anything about it. And in other words, I wasn't saying, well, if Aer Lingus gets more expensive, well then I'm going to have to move to Ryanair. I wasn't saying anything like that. So this is where I'm now going to take you through what you've proven to me just there is you have proven to me this is elasticity in action. What you've just done is you have just proven exactly what elasticity is. Elasticity is if I have to make a decision about my money, which is what I said in the first case. I'll just go back there to the first question I asked you, is when you had to make the choice about like, okay, what can you hold on to? This is what we all do with our money all the time. I don't know about you, but like, do you have money to buy every single thing that you might possibly want in the world? Because if not, well, then you're going to have to make choices. So therefore, you're going to have to make choices. Do I buy X or do I buy Y? Do I buy a new iPhone or do I buy new clothes? Do I buy a bottle of water with my lunch or do I buy a bar of chocolate? Do I spend my money on going to the cinema or do I spend my money on going to the swimming pool, right? Whatever it might be. Whatever it might be, you have to make choices. And what depends on those choices is all about what you've learned in the law of demand, right? So I'm guessing if you're in 5th year, I'm guessing if you're in Leaving Cert, you know all about demand. However, when it comes to elasticity, it is what actually what leans on that demand and how does that change? So the thing is here, what I can see here that you guys value is communication with the people that you love. That's what we generally do with text messages. My case, I have that, and from a business point of view, I need to communicate constantly with people that we work with, constantly. So I would absolutely value that. And what, as I say, text and messages means text messages, WhatsApp messages, Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, like whatever it is. So that's what I'm seeing here. The second thing is that I can see that you love your food. So therefore, if the price of the food went up, I'm guessing you may not notice, and you may say, well, yeah, but my mom or my dad or my parents or my guardians buy me my food anyway. Okay, but remember, this is where you're looking at it from an individual point of view. And also Netflix, interesting, a lot of you would give up that so that you can communicate with others, which is an interesting point. Earphones, well, earphones enable you to be able to access whatever you need to access, but more so on your own. So whether it is you listening to music, you listening to the session, and then Instagram, I'm actually surprised to see that as low as it is. But the reason that I went on to ask you the second one was what became more important to you is elasticity can change. Like what's important to us can actually change. And certain things can happen, like an event, like lockdown, that can make things in some cases more important or in some cases less important. So like I say, what I'm going to do is I would take those images and I will post them on my Instagram later on, so that you can see what those are and you can see how they work. Now, just remember as well, what I was doing there is all primary research. It's all primary research. I did the same with you the last time. There was hundreds and hundreds on this on the session last time as well, and we ran a poll and we compared your thoughts, which is primary research, to what we see on to what we might see in secondary research. So we took the PwC Retail and Consumer Insights report. So tonight I'm going to do something else. Okay, so that is precisely what primary research is when you ask a lot of people for their ideas as well. Now, just to do one more thing on this before, I'm going to go back and take another look at the questions that I'm going to get in, and we're going to look at more of the theory behind elasticity. Then I'm going to link it into sustainability, and then we'll bring it back to how you might look at that from an individual point of view as well. Okay, this is the type of a closed question, right? A closed question is where you give people a choice, and then as you can see how people vote then as a result. So of course, actually, for the crack, what other point would you put up there? If you had to pick one thing for the next month and you didn't have any of those, what would it be? So what did I not think of? What did I not think of? This is all in the name of research, as I say. So what did I not think of? I'm just going to, again, pop out my questions pod there. What did I not think of? Okay, interesting. Interesting. So one of you said, for example, hanging out with my friends. Okay, right. And yeah, I was trying to get at that. I was trying to get at that angle from the text and messages point of view. Leisha said physically meeting people like family and friends. Well, you know, I suppose there's a lot of restrictions around that anyway, but it's a good point. Yeah. Jake says FaceTime. Okay, and that's the thing, is that here's a way in which, on reflection, you see where I'm going with this? A reflection I might have had after I do everything in my project is then I might have said, well, on reflection, I may have included another element into my research, into my survey, because then that would have given me a greater insight into my research study. So what I've just done with you there, is that I have done a reflection. I have just said, right, now that I've conducted my research process, my conclusions, by the way, my conclusions is that the top two things that people would choose to live with for the next month would be texts and messages, as well as their favorite type of food. However, only 3 out of currently 51 people have chosen only for Instagram. Interestingly, there was a number of things that rose in importance. And by the way, I might take a picture of this and put it into my now. Again, I'm not asking you to do something like this for your project, or not suggesting you do it. But the point is, when I get a lot of information like this, this could be an interesting way to present it. So say, right, well, interestingly, the top 5 things that grew in importance and thus became less elastic, see the way I'm getting in my economic concept there? They became less elastic was family, friends, exercise, technology, and good Wi-Fi. Right, so obviously I know you don't pay for your family, but you'll see where I'm going with this. On the other hand, what became less important during lockdown was things like holidays, like travel, like clothes, etc. And then I could go on and I could analyze from there, right? In conclusion, so my conclusions are, sorry, what I've just done there in terms of my analysis, it's, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this relates back to my economic concept. On reflection, based on what you're telling me, I could have put in physically meeting people like family and friends, Xbox and FaceTime. I might have put that in. Or I might say, well, interestingly, another thing I've noticed is that only 39 people answered the question about what became less important, whereas in comparison, 51 people, they expressed a view on what they would only choose for the next month. Now, why is that? Well, this is a closed question. So a closed question is where you give people like, let's say, pick 1 out of 5, like I showed you, or I could have asked you to pick 3 out of 5. But an open question was the second 2. An open question is where I ask a question and then you have to come up with the answer. So I might say, on reflection, in my 125 to 150 words, is that I might have included more closed questions in my survey, because that enables people to give me more answers. Again, that's reflection. On reflection, I was interested to see that less people picked Instagram than I thought, because rather than engage in social media, actually people prefer to talk directly, one-to-one or one-to-many, with their closer group of friends. What I'm doing here is I'm just giving you examples of how research is conducted and then analyzed and then reflected on. Okay, so as I said, before I move on to a bit more theory, and we're going to link the theory now of what we've just done with elasticity a bit tighter, just going to pop back over here to the questions and see what you have been asking me. Okay, Tia said, is there any websites that you recommend for the government policy topic? Loads, Tia, loads, but I dealt with them all in a previous session, so let me just show you. If you go on to, so Positive Economic Study is the website, it's Edco's website just for us, just for our book. And if you go in there into blog, click OK here, and go down here to, or go over here to blog, and if you go to the webinar on understanding fiscal policy, there's a range of them. There's a range of them in there. So a range of of all of these resources here, all of those are all with a lot of government information. Fabian says, sorry to be difficult about this. Okay, you're quite okay. You can be difficult, no problem. The aim should be presented in the context of the LO, you mean learning outcomes of the specification. Just below that said, should be based on the application of economic concepts and economic theory to the line of inquiry. Does that necessarily let me go back up there now. Does that necessarily, sorry, it's just there's a lot of questions here. I'm just making sure. So you said, does that necessarily mean it has to be in the context of the specification? Okay, so let me go back over there now again. So you said here, the research process should be based on the application of economic concepts and economic theory to the line of inquiry. Okay, well, the research process should be related. Okay, I see what you mean. So what you're saying is if the aims of the line of inquiry is in the context of their learning outcomes, does the research process have to be built in the aims? Okay, so I'm going to leave it to you completely, Fabian, to interpret this, because as I say, I didn't write and I won't be marking it. So fundamentally, I have as much information as you do. The only thing I would say is that when it comes to this other word down here, that's another one that's very important, is overall coherence, which means that that the whole thing has to be presented so that it's very coherent. And that's what was really, really great about working with Brian and Trudy, is we really put each other to the test on this. Is like, okay, did we respond back to the aims at the beginning? Did we go back to the line of inquiry? Did we go back to the economic concepts that we said we would pick up on? Did we make sure that everything that was referred to in the research process referred back up to the introduction, etc.? That's what we did. So that's all I would say, is completely up to you as regards how you interpret it. The way I would see it is, okay, you've got the aims of the line of inquiry in the context of the learning outcomes in the specification. If you then run the research process on different concepts, just also make sure down here that it's coherent, right? And that's really, as I say, you've got the same information as me anyway, but that would be the way in which I would put that. Okay, thank you, Sis Fabian, you're very welcome. Then, so now interesting question here from Salsable. Hi, Miss Susan, I teach economics for Leaving Cert in Libya. Wow, in Libya. Geez, you're very welcome. My students are still writing the introduction to the start. They were so confused. Thank you for the webinars. You're very, very welcome. Should the students in the conclusion suggest solutions? Well, what I would say there, in terms of suggesting solutions, you could for sure. Yep, you could for sure. But also if you have them, great. Like, so for example, in order to increase exports, I could have said, as at the end of the case study, I could have said, well, from talking to people, one of the key things that they valued was the support from Enterprise Ireland. In order to boost exports in the future, that support to be increased or maybe targeted outside of Dublin or whatever. You could do that. But another good one, guys, and I hope you spotted me doing this in the reflections, is to come up with further research questions. That's another good idea, is to come up with further research questions. So now that I've answered this question, it would be very interesting to understand that question. Now that I know that entrepreneurship is rising, let's say in Ireland, I would now be interested to know, is female entrepreneurship rising? Or is entrepreneurship, what's the average age of an entrepreneur in Ireland? Or what are the entrepreneurship ambitions of entrepreneurs in Ireland? That's another way of doing it as well. Okay, Ross said, can the research process be written like in an essay format instead of bullet points? Yes, Ross, that's what I did in this second case study as well. You'll see that was that we just, we took out an awful lot of the bullets because it doesn't say anything about bullet points or anything else. Just do remember over here is that the text needs to be in that font size. You need to have the left margin, the right margin, and so on. It doesn't say anything else about bullet points or anything else. So that's why and particularly our editor she was very keen that would happen, is that we would have differing, a different way of doing that rather than conveying that this is the only way. Okay, so right, I think I've dealt with lots of points there, which is good. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop this over here and I put together some slides. Well, when I say put them together, these are the ones that we put together when we were writing the book originally that I just want to pick up on in the context, specifically in the context of the Mentimeter. That's the tool that I use there. As I say, I'll be posting those up on Instagram afterwards as well, just so then you can see what you said in the context of everybody else as well. Okay, now right, so for a couple of slides that I wanted to pick out of the slides that go with the book. This one is one, perfectly inelastic demand. Now these are the things where we say, you know what, I don't care how much it costs, I'm going to buy it anyway. And that is, imagine if you had to pay for the things that became more important to you over lockdown. What would they have been? So if it was good Wi-Fi, if the price went up by 10%, would you have said, yeah, okay, I would pay for it anyway? If it came to, let's say, those of you who picked Netflix, if Netflix went from €7 a month or €16 a month to €20 a month to €18 a month, would you have said, yeah, I'll do it anyway? You know what I have to say about Netflix, guys? I wouldn't have paid for that at all until I started watching The Crown. I just love The Crown. I think The Crown is great. That's what I was doing yesterday afternoon. Now, was I settled into? I'm only in season 2, so there's loads more to go, and so therefore that is also something that now changed my elasticity. So again, just to point out the fact, my elasticity is how much of a change, for example, in price, we'll just deal with price at the moment, would it affect my demand? So if Netflix went from €16 a month to €32 a month, would I still pay for that? But if it went from 16 to €17 a month, would I still pay for that? And at what point, how much higher would it actually have to go before I'd say no? And there are certain things, it does not matter how high price that they will go, does not matter, we will still pay for them. And that is what you see with perfectly inelastic demand. It means it does not matter how much it costs, we will pay for them. Very few things actually that could just keep on going up and 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 up, and we wouldn't care. But to give you some examples of things that are quite close to being perfectly inelastic is food or medicine. The thing is that I have a glass of water here, and if I was really thirsty, would I pay $5 for a small bottle of water? Yes, I would, because I might be really thirsty. And I remember one time I was in New York in the really, really heat of the summer in August, and right in the center of the city, it was down by ground zero. And I'd say I probably did pay $5 for a bottle of water at that stage, because it didn't matter if it was $5, if it was $8, if it was $10 for this little half-liter bottle of water, because I was really, really thirsty at the time. Also, I've had childhood asthma. I didn't know asthma was a thing that can go away, but it is. And therefore, in my case, I was somebody where I needed an inhaler when I was younger. It doesn't, at that stage, if you're finding it difficult to breathe, it doesn't matter how much something costs, of course. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pay for it until it's there. Now, sorry, I didn't realize that that you are looking at, I thought you were looking at my correct screen. Okay, actually, I'm going to stop sharing there a second, because I want to show you a different screen than that. Let me just stop sharing there, and I'm going to start sharing here. Very good. Oh, sorry, as well, while I'm doing that now, can I also just say a big hello to the students of Sculvera Buncrana. They invited me to speak at their school last week, and I did, and they asked me some great questions. So just want to say hello to you guys, and thanks so much for being here as well. And thank you to everyone who's here. Of course, thank you to everyone that's here. But as I say, just wanted to say a hello, and also for your lovely, lovely message on Instagram and Facebook as well. I really appreciated that. Now, okay, let me just go on there now to what I was showing you, which is perfectly inelastic demand, right? So something like food, something like something where it is really, it doesn't matter how much it costs, and that usually comes from when we're deeply, deeply in need of something. Like, as I say, you know, if I value my health, I value my ability to be able to breathe, therefore I need an inhaler. And as I say, thank God that isn't the case anymore. Now, the next one, of course, is this, which is inelastic demand. Now, inelastic demand means, well, if the price goes up a little bit, I'm still going to buy. Or if the price goes up a good bit, I'm probably going to buy a little bit less. But if the price goes up a lot, well, then I may change my expenditure. What it really means is that this is something whereby, you know, if the price goes up, if the price goes up, let's say Netflix, right? Netflix, and I'm watching The Crown, and I'm halfway through the second series, and now people are telling about the Queen's Gambit that I should look at that as well. And then Netflix decide to double their prices. Would Netflix lose half their customers? So if the price doubled, multiplied by 2, would the quantity demanded halve? That's the question. And if it wouldn't, if the price doubled and the number of people who are members or subscribers of Netflix, maybe they fall by like, a quarter, that would be an elastic demand. So the picture that we chose here, I actually wrote the picture brief in this case. Brian was coming up with the individual examples that we quoted in the book, and it was different. It was interesting how Trudy was looking at this in a very different way again, because she was coming up with the whole ideas of how the tables were, and you can see all the colors. But I was the one coming up with the picture briefs in this case anyway. And this poor dude, right? I was trying to convey the idea that this dude is driving somewhere, and suddenly he realizes, oh, he's run out of petrol. It does not matter if the petrol is 10% higher in the place where he gets lost. He's still going to pay for it. And that links me back. So in elastic demand, your demand can also become more inelastic. It's not that it's stationary. So if you want to know where your income, your demand becomes more elastic, all you need to do is look at this question. Look at this question. Look at what you said. This is what became more important to you during lockdown. All of these things, I know you don't pay for family, but all of these things, basically you're saying that if the price of these went up, their importance also went up, so you probably would have paid more for them, or at least if the price went up, you wouldn't have cancelled your subscription to the gym. I know you can go to the gym when you could go to the gym, or your Wi-Fi or whatever. So in your case right here, this became more, you became more inelastic, okay? Now, so that's inelastic. Then if we go over here to this one, let me go to the next one there. Here is where this is elastic. This, you know what, is that if the price goes up, well, then you get less of it. That's just simple as, if the price goes up, well, then you buy less. So an example of something with elastic demand, it might be, perhaps it might be if the price of an Aer Lingus flight goes up, well, then I'll simply move to Ryanair. Or if the price of, let's say, the price of a wrap in Boojum goes up, well, then I will simply go to Chopped for their Chopito instead. And you can probably guess where I'm going with this, is that when elastic demand, when something is in place like this, this is where, meh, I don't know, I don't really mind. If I get it, I get it, but if I don't, I don't. And usually you would say that if you like something and you do like it, if it goes up in a price in one particular shop, and you can find it in a different shop that's very close, your demand is quite likely to be elastic. That's what I mean by Ryanair or Aer Lingus. So I would like to go to London. I'd like to go to London. This is post-lockdown, of course. I'd like to go to London, and Aer Lingus and Ryanair both have prices of flights available for 70 euros. And then Aer Lingus puts their price to 75 euros. But Ryanair is still 70. Well, then I just go with Ryanair. It still brings me, let's say it's to the same airport, let's say it's broadly speaking similar time of year. That's the way it kind of is. Well, in that case, my demand for an airline then makes the good relatively elastic. And that's what an example of that is. Now, question for you. Here is a question for you. And actually, what I'm going to do is I am going to run a poll on this, right? And because I'm going to actually ask you a question that will probably lead you to figuring out this exactly yourself, right? So I'm going to get that poll for you right now. And I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. I'm going to ask if, I'm going to say Instagram Messenger, right? So when I say Instagram Messenger, I could mean this for any of the messengers, right? So maybe it's Facebook Messenger, maybe it's WhatsApp. Okay, start. Another, right? So in this, you are going to prove a point to me. messaging. Okay, so I've just created a poll there now, and I am going to quickly ask you this. Done. I'm going to ask you this. This is what I'm just doing right now, doing primary research. Okay, and go. Tell me, if Instagram Messenger started to charge, would you use another messaging app instead? So now, in order to send a message on Instagram Messenger, so if you want to send me, 42% of you have voted. 47%, 49% of you have voted. 20 seconds. We're 20 seconds in. So you now are going to send me a message, but it's going to cost you, and Instagram is going to collect the money. Would you use another app instead? Because of course they are available. It could be email, it could be Facebook, it could be whatever. Right, 65% of you have voted. It's now 40 seconds in. I'm going to give this 10 seconds countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and close the poll. 71% of you voted. Close and share. There's your answer. 95% of you said you would use another messaging app instead. 5% of you said no, you would stay. You are happy to pay Instagram to send messages to other Instagram users. Right, now why is that of interest? And what has that got to do with elasticity? Well, just going to hide the poll results. And what you're seeing there is perfectly elastic demand, which means any increase of that good results in its quantity falling to zero. If Instagram Messenger was to charge, based on the results of this group anyway, 95% of you would stop using it. That is perfectly elastic demand. And you might say, yeah, but Susan, we don't pay for it anyway. That's the point, is that an increase in the price from €0 to €1, right? €1 a month or 10 cents a message. Well, that's the way texting used to be before. Oh, sorry. I need to go back sharing my screen again. That's the way texting used to be before. Screen 3. Am I right? Yeah. Is that if I wanted to send a text to my boyfriend, then it would have cost me 10 cents. And also there was a limit. There was a limit to how many characters you could send. So I remember like being in college where you'd have to send, one message that was basically the equivalent to 3 texts to figure out where we were going to meet and who we were going to meet and all the rest of it. I spent a fortune on credit simply texting, and all of that's changed. And now, of course, people are like, sorry, you actually paid to send a text message. Yep, plenty we paid as well. So there you go. That's an example. The poll I just ran there is it's a primary research method of proving an economic concept. That's just what I did there, right there. Okay, now if I go again, the thing is, and again, we're sticking with price elasticity here. I'm being careful of my time now, is what factors affect the price elasticity? Well, here's when things become more or less elastic, right? First of all, the availability of close substitutes. That's why I was saying to you about Ryanair and Aer Lingus. That's why I was saying to you about Chopped and Boojum, is when it comes to, yeah, I can get that somewhere else. Because you might say, why wasn't everyone in New York that day paying $5 for a half a litre of water? Sure, it was everywhere. There was water, there was loads of bottles of water available on sale. So the availability of close substitutes, that's the first thing. On the other hand, a lot of you mentioned streaming services when I asked you that question there as opposed to anything else. How many more? Like, I can't get The Crown anywhere else, so therefore I don't have a close substitute. Of course, I could watch something else, or I obviously could go on YouTube and I could watch documentaries there, which is what I do all the time too. But the thing is the availability of close substitutes, that makes a difference. If it was an inhaler, because I said that I really needed my inhaler when I was a child, but I didn't say a specific brand of inhaler. Second thing is complementary goods. If I have a tennis racket, what good is it without a tennis ball? I can't get a slitter, I can't get a football, I can't get a soccer ball, I can't get a baseball. What good is it? So also, if you have one thing and it only works if you have another thing, then therefore that is also going to determine your needs as well. Is a commodity a luxury or a necessity? Well, I might really enjoy, like one of the things that I've said I just love is coffee. I love drinking coffee. And is it a luxury or a necessity? I've made sure that it is a luxury, because I don't want to trick my brain into thinking that it's constantly needed. like a necessity. My inhaler, on the other hand, that was a different story. Water, on the other hand, that was a different story. Like, again, looking back there to what you spoke about, you know, exercise. Really, I have to say, while a lot of people treat it like a luxury, it is a necessity for your physical and your mental health. But this fourth one is actually really important as well. This is another one, is the proportion of income that's spent in the commodity. If you think about it, right, if I go and let's say I'm saying the Crown is a subscription to Netflix, €7 a month. But if that was 70 and I was really interested in the Crown and then they put it up to 100, that's actually a really big increase. Not alone is it a big increase of the €30, it's actually then it becomes a bigger part of your income. Now, because I could have said here, I could have said a house. I could have said a house is something where no matter how more expensive it gets, you're still going to buy accommodation, right? Whether it's rent or whether it's, the thing is though, is that it's too broad a category to just say about one thing. So you actually, if you can't, let's say, afford to rent in a certain part of the world that you might want to, maybe like some of the most expensive real estate in the world is in Hong Kong. A lot of people won't live in Hong Kong because of the price of property over there. They simply won't. Therefore, they go everywhere else. They go somewhere else. So actually, they are quite price elastic. They might be inelastic to the broad category of having accommodation, but they might feel that it's inelastic, or they may feel inelastic about broad context of having accommodation, but their demand for a certain type of property, like let's say city or apartment living in Hong Kong, actually is quite elastic, because then they go maybe to Seoul, or they might go to Shanghai, or they might go to India, and might Australia, or wherever else. Also, the durability of the commodity. If you want good quality, often your demand is often less elastic. So then, of course, there's other couple of things here. And again, I know that you'll do all of this with your teachers, so I'm not going to elaborate here, whether it comes to expectations as to future changes in price or the length of time. Of course, then there's also branding. If an influencer that you follow uses a particular brand, you are likely to be far, far, far more inelastic. You want that brand. If the price goes up, the price goes up. Doesn't matter. You want it for that particular brand, or what that brand loyalty represents, or also because maybe an influencer buys it and you want it too. And then, of course, there's also the number of alternative uses that the good has. A tennis ball is great for playing tennis, but it's actually great for playing with a dog. It's actually great as well to roll around almost like a massage at the bottom of your foot. It's also good for arts and crafts. Like I could go on and on. On the other hand, a golf ball might actually have less uses. Like I don't know, our dog at home anyway in Cork, much more a fan of the tennis ball now than the golf ball. And the last thing I'm just going to mention here is that, and then I go back to your questions, and I just want to talk to you briefly about price discrimination. Is the last thing I want to talk to you about then is, if the price changes, that might have one impact, but also what about your income? If you earn more, right? So you're in college, right? You're in college like I used to be. You're working a part-time job at the weekend. You are going out 2 nights a week with the college gang, and you want to save money to go away on your J1 in America when you're in 3rd year. I didn't do that now. I didn't do the J1, but I did the rest of it. Didn't do the J1. I set up my first business when I was 21. So that's what I was doing. And I've been to America with it many times since. Anyway, the point I'm making is that when it comes, for example, then to maybe spending money on an expensive restaurant, I was not going to be doing that, using my hard-earned money to enjoy a lovely dinner when I could have been using that money to go out for lunch 3 times that week or something else like that. Or maybe I needed to save the money to go away on that J1, or maybe I was saving money towards a deposit on the car, or maybe that was the rent money, or whatever it might have been. And let's say then that person graduates and they start off in a job, I'm going to say they start off in a job, €25,000 a year. Then they may decide instead that they want to go out for dinner because it's something different that they want to do, rather than, you know, queuing for a nightclub in the cold. So as a result of that, their income also makes a difference. The brands that which they're loyal to, that makes a difference. So elasticity is something that generally makes a really big difference when it comes to making decisions. So what can companies do? What can companies do to encourage us to be more inclined to be less elastic away of where in other words, that rather than going away and not saying, yeah, I'm going to stay here with my money, what do they do? Well, here's where price discrimination comes in. So price discrimination is the idea, well, imagine that there are certain numbers of people that if they got things a little bit cheaper than the average person, then they probably would spend their money here, right? So they're more elastic, right? So they're more movable. And the thing is that, so if the price goes up a little bit, they're more likely to go. But actually, if the price comes down a little bit, they're more likely to stay. Now, how can we encourage those people to stay and not run away, but not, you know, have disgruntled people on the other hand, who then will say, well, I didn't get a lower price, so what about me? Well, here's how you do it. This is exactly how, let's say, coffee shops have certain deals for students. They'll say, well, there's 10% off everything from Monday until Thursday for if you can produce a student card. So actually, what they're doing there is, number one, there's price discrimination, because they're saying we will discriminate towards students and we'll say, right, your price is lower. However, the reason that we don't, you know, turn all of our other customers very angry towards us is we're saying only if you produce a student card, everybody knows that students aren't earning money as people who might be in employment are earning, and people understand that. So that could be one example. Another one is, I'm running a cafe and I'd say, I would love to have more people come into the restaurant. I understand that not everybody can afford, let's say, to go out for a coffee and a scone every day or 3 times a week. So what could I do? What could I do? You know what I'll do is that I will say that there's a special price available during my quieter hours. So then I'll say to people, so people who are likely, maybe they come in, maybe they won't, is then I'll say to them, right, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say that between 10 a.m. and 12 noon, which is after the breakfast rush, before the lunch rush, I'm going to say that we have a special offer of time in there. So therefore, people who maybe wouldn't come in on a normal day because of the price, then I'll incentivize them to come in at that particular stage. That's price discrimination. It's where you change your price, but you for certain groups of people who could be more elastic than others. And then what you do is that you do so in such a way that it's still, you still have your people who aren't frustrated because they're not getting the same price. And on the other hand, you also make it clear to those people why certain people are getting prices like, as I say, a student card or like certain hours in the day, etc. That's the way in which you handle elasticity as a business person. And the very last thing before I get open up the questions is, how does this tie back to sustainability? So let's just bring this back up over here, right? 2 things I want to show you. Number one is this. Here is an infographic from the CSO all about information society, right? So in 2020, 86% of internet users use email. 76% use internet banking. I can also see here 21% used education websites and portals. 55% watch video on demand, whether that's Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, etc. Okay. Now, the question that you might ask is, will those change when we lift out of lockdown? Will those change? In fact, some of those, like the gyms are open tomorrow, restaurants and so on, they're all open at the weekend. So will that change? And that is one question that we might ask. Here's the secondary information that we might have. We could conduct a survey and say to people, right, do you think your behavior will change as a result of changing lockdown? Because if it did change as a result of lockdown, you've proven all that to me. So that's one point when you look at the COVID angle. And when you look at the sustainability angle, if you bring back the sustainability angle over here, if I go back down here on sustainable development for individual behavior, is I did ask you in the last session, I did say, well, would you pay more for sustainably made products? 85% of you said you would. So that also leads to elasticity. Is when I spoke earlier about brand and loyalty and so on like that, when I went back to here and I said, this one, consumer purchase habits, brand loyalty and advertising effectiveness. If a product is proven to be more sustainable than others and it advertises that fact, would that actually make you less elastic? Would that make you more loyal? And if it does, how does that affect pricing? So it's all of these things. These are all examples of all of these are individual ways in which you can bring economics to life for sure. You can bring it to life. But what you can also do is you can just see how all of these themes are so focused on being able to be researched. They're all of these ideas, you can just come up with single specific angles. One other thing that I've been asked a lot, actually, is whether people have been sending me their lines of inquiry and asking me to come back to them. The thing is that really isn't something that I'm not in a position to be able to tell you whether it's the right one or whether it's the perfect one or whatever else, is because I'm not marking this. And being in the position that I am as somebody that has written the research booklet with my 2 authors and also, of course, the textbook, I'm not in a position to be able to say yes or no. So just letting you know about that. All I'll ever do is direct you back to the brief and say, does it answer what the brief specifies? Now, so a familiar name here to me, Kira says, thanks very much, Susan, you're very welcome. Now, Chris says, okay. So Chris says, any example for unitary like the others you used? You see, this is the thing, Chris, is there's very little out there where you can exactly say, and this was, I remember we were having this chat, 3 of us, writing the book. We're talking about in terms of unitary, is there anything where if it went up by €1, if something went up by 1%, then sales would automatically go up by 1%? And the answer is, it's very hard to come up with an example for that. But what I am sure of is that certain things are elastic and certain things are inelastic. And you have to have somewhere in the middle where one crosses the other. So the example for unitary, I don't have a tangible example where I for sure know that it happens, but as a theory, it's important that you have the middle point in between. Dermot says, how easy is it to switch? How easy is it to switch? Is a great factor affecting PED. Yeah, price elasticity of demand to get a discussion going. How long are you prepared to wait to speak to customer service rep Sky to cancel your subscription or switch bank, electricity provider, waste collector, etc. And you're right there for sure, Dermot. It's a great way to get the conversation going, as well as how does your views change as a result as well. So as a result of something like COVID, and when we get past the project, of course your views might be different on other aspects of economics too. When you get past the Leaving Cert, when a new influencer comes out, when you want the new technology, when, yes, I've always been loyal to that influencer, but on the other hand, now that there's this new technology, and there isn't an influencer there, but I kind of like the idea anyway. That's the question, and it's a really fascinating topic. Fabian said, I've always struggled to wrap my head around this. Why is unitary elastic demand drawn as a curved line rather than a straight line at a 45-degree angle? Now, let me, I don't have it on this. Oh, I do, yeah, I do. 1 second now. Let me just get this for you here. Right, this one. Yeah, that's it. Because it's actually written, if that was to be like if that was to be a 45-degree angle, it would be unitary right along the curve, whereas here in this case there's actually just 1 point. So that is why it's drawn with it's drawn like a circle, is because it actually relates to differing points along the way. If it was a straight line, it would assume that unitary was happening all the time. That's why. So it's said to be unitary elastic when the proportionate percentage change in the quantity demanded of a good is equal to the proportionate percentage change of that good. But it really and truly is something where, you know, it just doesn't really exist in theory or in practice where I could say, yeah, definitely that's definitely the way it is. So last thing that I'm going to do with you this evening is I am going to tell you that we have the next topic ready. It's Thursday the 7th. I'm just going to get this now for you. Yeah, okay, here we go. It is Thursday the 7th of January, and I'm just going to pop it into the chat. So the next one is going to focus on, there you go. The next one is going to focus on employment and the economy. Again, another area that is of huge use. It's really, really interesting as well to look at it. And I'm particularly going to now start focusing on topics that I think are more and more of interest in terms of your overall lives as students and of course as teachers, but particularly we're going to look at the future of the world of work there as well. A lot of teenagers tell me over the years that they're worried that their that they'll be fighting against robots in future years for jobs, so they might be worried about whether they'll be able to get a job in the future and so on. So I'm going to talk to you about that. Let's look at it from again a sustainability angle, but also from the point of view of understanding just how employment really works, how it affects the economy, and how governments have to act now to prepare the workforce for tomorrow. I think I've answered all the questions tonight, which is great because I usually struggle to be able to get to do that. And on that note, I'm just going to wish you all the very best for a lovely, lovely, lovely Christmas. Yes, you are the first group that I've wished Happy Christmas to. Best wishes, of course, with the last of your preparations for your project. And I will see you all again on Thursday, the 7th of January. Thank you all to each and every one of you, and good night.